Okay, so you're here because you really want to get this whole COSO ERM framework, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you've got like a big meeting coming up, or just you're one of those people who just likes to know how things work, how to make things excellent.
Absolutely.
And I think you're in the right place because COSO, I mean, they're a big deal, right?
Yeah, big deal.
In the business world. And this framework, this enterprise risk management framework, that's the gold standard
Yeah,
for navigating all the risks that are out there.
it is.
But not just avoiding problems. We're talking about
It's,
reaching your goals, right?
it's that strategic side of risk management that I think people sometimes miss.
Right.
They think of it as purely defensive, just like, oh, we got to avoid these pitfalls. But it's so much more than that with the COSO ERM framework.
So it's kind of about figuring out how much risk you can take
Exactly.
to reach those big goals, right?
It's about having a really well-defined risk appetite.
Okay.
Like, you think about a startup, right? They might have a much higher risk appetite than, say, some company that's been around for like 100 years.
Right.
You know, they're willing to take bigger gambles
Makes sense.
because they're trying to grow super fast.
Yeah.
A larger company, maybe they're a little more focused on protecting what they've already built.
Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So let's break down the framework itself.
Okay.
I know there are 5 main components.
Yeah.
But what are they really about?
So let's start with that foundation.
Right. Okay.
Governance and culture. It's all about the leadership, right?
Uh-huh.
Setting the tone,
Okay.
making sure everybody in the organization, like, gets it, like, understands how important this risk management stuff is.
Yeah.
It's about creating that culture where people, like, feel good. They feel comfortable, like, identifying potential risks, talking about them, you know?
So it's not just having like a big binder
No.
on the shelf, right?
It can't be just a checklist.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's got to be embedded
Right. It's part of
in the way you do business.
the day-to-day conversation.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of leads us to that second component, strategy and objective setting,
Okay.
which is where you're really figuring out, okay, here's what we want to do. Here's our goals.
Yeah.
How much risk are we willing to accept?
To get there, right.
Yeah.
But how do you actually figure that out?
Right.
Is it just a bunch of people sitting around a table, like with a whiteboard, brainstorming?
Sometimes, but I mean, there are more structured ways to go about it.
Okay.
Like a lot of organizations, they use these risk workshops
Oh, okay.
where they bring people together from all the different departments
Okay.
to try to really figure out what are the potential risks here and how bad could they be,
Right.
you know? So you get everybody on the same page.
That's a great idea.
Yeah,
Get everybody in the same room.
exactly. So that shared understanding is so powerful for the whole organization to move forward.
Okay, so now you've identified all your risks.
Yeah.
Like what happens next?
All right, so then you move into performance, right?
Okay.
This is where you get into the actual managing of the risks.
Right.
And there are tools for this, right? Like companies use this thing called a risk heat map.
Oh, a heat map.
Yeah.
It's visual.
I like visuals.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can see all the different risks,
Yeah,
right? And you can kind of get a sense of like, how bad could this be?
Yeah.
Like, what's the potential impact?
And how do you actually like measure if they're happening or not?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So that's where these key risk indicators, KIIs, come in.
KIIs.
Yeah. Think of it like the warning lights, on your car dashboard.
Okay.
So they're metrics that kind of tell you, hey, this particular risk, it's going up.
Okay.
Right. So, for example, let's say you're worried about customer churn. Right. One of your KRIs might be like, how many customer complaints are you getting every month?
Right. So if that starts to go up, if it starts to spike,
You know you've got a problem.
you got to do something.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. But risk is always changing.
Right. Always.
So how do you keep up with that?
Right. So that's the role of our fourth component, review and revision.
Okay.
Right. It's got to be ongoing. You know what I mean? It's not a set it and forget it kind of thing.
Yeah, you can't just put it on autopilot.
No, no, no.
Yeah.
You've got to keep evaluating, like, what's working, what's not working,
Yeah.
and how do we need to adjust? Like, are things different now?
Yeah.
You know, there's a good quote about this, like, risk management isn't static. It's a dynamic process of continuous improvement.
Ooh, that's a great quote.
Right.
It's like always adapting.
Always adapting. Exactly.
So then the last one,
yeah.
information and reporting.
Yes.
That sounds pretty straightforward.
Sure.
But I'm guessing there's a little more to it.
There's always more to it than meets the eye, right?
Right, yeah.
It really boils down to communication, right?
Oh.
Making sure everybody in the organization, they have the info they need.
To understand what's happening.
Yeah, to understand the risks.
Yeah.
And then how are we managing this? What are we doing about it? And then also reporting up, right? To the higher-ups, to the leadership, to external stakeholders.
Right.
So everybody sees the big picture.
So transparency.
Everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what makes this framework so powerful.
Okay.
It's not just like a set of rules. It's like, it's a way of operating.
Yeah.
It's a way of thinking.
Yeah.
That makes your whole organization more resilient, more successful.
So for our listeners out there, how does knowing about all this, how does that help them in their own work?
Right. Well, I mean, first of all, better decision making, right?
Okay.
If you understand the risks that are involved in whatever project you're doing, whatever decision you're making, you're going to make a better choice.
Right.
And you can also communicate better about those risks.
To your team, to your stakeholders.
And if someone's working like specifically in a compliance or like risk management role.
This framework is essential, I would say.
Yeah, they have to know this. Right?
Yeah, you've got to have it. And having a strong understanding of COSO ERM, like that's a huge plus, right? On a resume, in an interview, it shows employers you're serious about good governance, good risk management, which are essential to any successful organization, really.
Yeah, and even beyond just like the career, the resume stuff, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this can help you build trust with people you're working with, right?
Totally.
If you're transparent about risks, how you're managing them, that shows you're reliable, you're responsible.
Absolutely.
Right.
And think about the impact, right?
Yeah.
Companies that really implement this framework well, they see improvements all over the place, right? Better compliance culture, better decisions, and even just like they reach their goals.
It's amazing how something that starts with identifying problems can actually lead to all these positive things.
It speaks to the power of the framework. It's not just about like mitigating the bad stuff. It's about actually enabling success.
Yeah. So the big takeaway here is that COSO ERM, it's not just like a set of rules, right? It's really a tool for achieving that organizational excellence.
It's a roadmap for navigating risk and actually getting where you want to go.
And on that note, I want to leave you with this. Think about how you could apply even just one tiny part of this whole framework to your work, to your life, right? Like maybe it's being a little more proactive when you're identifying potential problems in a project. Or having a more open conversation with your team. About some of the challenges that you're facing. Right? I mean, even little steps can make a big difference.
They can.
So that's all for today.
Awesome.
We'll see you next time.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.